Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, college football fans across the nation and around the world. This is Tim May with the Tim May Podcast. And boy, it feels pretty comfortable in this cockpit today because I welcome back my usual co-pilot. He's been missing in action. Actually, he's been in action. He's been missing on the Tim May Podcast for a while. Austin Ward. Austin Ward, welcome back to the Tim May Podcast, my man, and welcome back to that seat, my brother.
Whew. It's good to be back. What a whirlwind it's been the last few weeks. But I guess, if you're going to take some trips and some working, some not, February is the right time to do it because business is about to pick up again for Ohio State football. They're working, but I didn't have to be because I couldn't be in mat drills. That's maybe I should be, but I wasn't. And but Texas and a cruise ship and North Carolina, and I don't even know where else I've been, but it's been great to get away. Not so great to just miss being part of this show, but we're here now and we're ready for March and a lot of spring ball coming.
Dude, I don't want to dwell on this, but did you play golf again in North Carolina? Did you do that trip again?
I sure did.
And where'd you play? Just real quick, just give people an idea where you played.
This year we did the Talamore Resort. So Talamore, that was our final course. We played on Saturday, Mid-South on Friday, and Pine Needles was where we started on Thursday. They're trying to get that course ready for the U.S. Women's Open in June.
Yeah.
So some more fine Pinehurst golf, and then a Friday afternoon at Thistledew, the putting green at Pinehurst itself, which is one of my favorite places in the entire world, with the beer cart set up and 18 of the most challenging, real holes that you could ever be putting on, and had 7 guys with me for that weekend, a nice trip to get away, and some fun was had, to be sure.
Did you win any Nassaus or Calcuttas? I mean,
I was a winner. I was a winner over the weekend, and that's the most important part of the equation, I guess. But I told them, I said, because the betting is fast and furious out there, but one of the bartenders asked me at Mid-South, she's like, she asked the group, who's going to win money today? And I said, I don't do it for the money. I only want their pride. That's what I play for.
Pelts, ladies and gentlemen. Austin Ward plays for pelts. I got to play golf in Vegas, Las Vegas, a few weeks ago over the Super Bowl weekend and stuff. Had a great time, and it's, that respite from February in Ohio. I mean, like I said, I love Ohio ever since I moved up here since 1976. I've loved it basically all the time except for the month of February, which seems it's the shortest month that seems to go on forever, and it's got the worst weather. Agreed?
Yeah, and then you cap it with the last day of February. You know that good golf weather's coming.
Yes.
It's my birthday, and then everything else is rolling along from there. So now I've got that bug. I think we're going to have, Tim, looks like maybe some nice weather. Maybe those courses around Columbus will be open on Saturday. We'll see what happens, but we know it's right around the corner.
Yeah, I got of course, me and my buddy Paul Spahn, Moose, are playing probably on Wednesday. So,
okay, you're not even going to wait for the weekend. I got you.
If it's 30 or above and everything's defrosted, that's fine enough with me, as long as I don't have to wear wading boots to play, if you follow my drift. But hey, I digress, man. As I told you, this is a supersonic flight we're taking today because I got places to go, people to see. And on this podcast, I'm very excited because I welcome in Nick Myers, the Ohio State men's lacrosse coach, for a sit down. Because his team is off to a ridiculous start, 4-0. Jack Myers, no relation to Nick Myers, is kind of leading the way there. And boy, they're playing some offense. As I joked with them, man, they've taken a page out of Ryan Day's book and just they're on the attack. And we talk about that. And an unranked team, which is now ranked in the top 10 in the nation, is going to be playing at Cornell this weekend. And this isn't just all about Ohio State sports and stuff, but I really appreciate these, quote, Olympic sports or non-rev sports because a lot of them are excelling right now. And I know you know that, but and he's all fired up because, they're finally going to get a dedicated lacrosse stadium. They've already broken ground for that, and will be for both the men's team and the women's team. But it just shows you that Gene Smith and these guys aren't messing around when it comes to having the greatest facilities they can put together in terms of just prolificness. If in fact that's the correct term, but giving everybody a home to where they can then excel. Correct?
Yeah, and we talked about that a couple of weeks ago during when Gene Smith had his sort of State of the Buckeyes address, and I wrote about it.
Yeah.
And, the conversation is always about how much of the resources are being allocated to football. Is it enough? Are they competing with, everybody else in that national arms race? But, and yes, the answer is they are doing that in football. And it seemed like for a long time, I'd asked Gene about this as well. There was a resistance to the coaching salaries and things of that sort. And part of the reason for that was how proud Ohio State was of the 34, 35 other non-revenue sports and, paying those people at a high level and competing for national championships and going to the NCAA tournament every year. And I think because I've not been around Ohio State my entire life, and I know I can compare it to some other places, the way that they, increasingly use the money that comes in from the Big Ten television deal, a lot of the other things that are allocated from the university and things like that to support all these other sports is remarkable. It does not happen everywhere.
Yes.
It's a short list of universities that can compete on that level, that scale, and in that many sports. So that's a long-winded way of saying doing stuff like this is why the overall athletic department is so impressive, and also why when we spend 364 days the rest of the year talking about football, that still does drive the bus there, but there's a pride that goes on in Columbus and on that campus for more sports than that. And they, women's volleyball, you see what they're doing, the tennis program, obviously lacrosse in this start here. You could go on down the list. I mean, there's a bunch of incredible coaches and student athletes that aren't just playing that sport that occupies our attention.
Yeah.
The rest of
Nick and I talked about that. I mean, he, basically that, when they have these head coaches meetings, the athletic department time, there's just a sense that everybody in there is getting after it. There's an aggressiveness to the meetings, even, that you can tell these are all driven people, not just Ryan Day and Chris Holtman, but all these others are just, you see the women's basketball team just won the Big Ten regular season championship, which was picked fifth, in the preseason poll, and they go out and they get it done. And same thing with Nick Myers and his lacrosse team. Now they're getting after it kind of in unexpected fashion, but who knew what coming out of the last 2 years of the COVID cycle and what that was going to bring. But there's aggressiveness is, I think, is the best way of putting what we're kind of witnessing about Ohio State sports in general, right?
It's fun. I mean, you don't have to walk far around that sort of athlete village that is growing seemingly by the day to stumble onto some pretty good sports being played at a high level. So it's actually we spent some time, like when Berman and I were on the Buckeye cruise, and there were a couple the volleyball coaches there, and they're like, well, I mean, you got to come out and see this atmosphere if you haven't been in a while, in this building, and they might be able to serve you some cocktails, and the fans are filling it up, and it's the right size venue, and they're playing really well. Like, well, bring your kids too, and not just for you. And do that almost any day of the week, it seems like. And their new facilities, they're nice, and that there's thousands of other kids down there that are working really hard to play. And as you said, when you get into those meetings, they're comparing, like, all right, well, football team wants to play for national championship every year. That's the standard. Well, that's happening over here, and you don't want to be the program, the sport that's falling behind. Like, oh, well, we finished in the middle of the Big Ten pack. Like, standards are high for everybody over there.
Yeah, and you're right. The Covelli Center is almost a perfect spot. I mean, it's like 4,000 seats, perfect when they were packing that place, for those women's volleyball run. And like Nick Myers pointed out, a 2,500, 3,000 seat lacrosse stadium is almost just right. I mean, for what they're building there between the Covelli Center and the Ty Tucker Tennis Center, that's almost the perfect size. I mean, you might draw 3,000, 5,000 people to Ohio Stadium when the lacrosse team plays in there, but it's just, they're lost in that place, and 100,000 seats. And you're right. I mean, like Gene Smith and I talked a little bit after that press conference, last week, a week and a half ago, that you were referring to. And, I don't think there's any sense anymore that you've got to build this ultimate palace for everything, but you want everything to be first class, top notch. I think the NIL, for example, name, image, and likeness drive now is sort of superseding the idea that you have to have a water wall in the locker room. You just want sparkling, nice facilities, but the main thing is you want it to be conducive, to building championship teams and attracting people. But it doesn't have to be ostentatious. Is that the correct term? Is it ostentatious or ostentatious?
Not spelled quite the same way, I don't believe. But and the other part to your point, Tim, is that there was this drive for so long. Well, let's have the biggest stadium. Let's have the biggest basketball arena. And Ohio State is actually an example of that.
Yes.
Where you lose part of the draw, part of the appeal, which is, the atmosphere and
ambiance,
all of that. Like we're not breaking new ground to say that doesn't exist in Value City Arena. So find the right size that works, because I think it's the things that you're talking about. And I know you went to some of those games and you've had the women's hockey, coach on, you've talked to them, women's hockey players, women's volleyball when that was going on. Like, and I know you've went and experienced some of that and seen it. Like, you have the right amount of people and it's full, and then the noise is trapped. Well, people are going to want to come back for that a lot more. If you just go and like, oh, I could get in because there were 6,000 empty seats for this, that, or the other thing. Like, build something that's right. And if you're going to make an error, maybe make it too small.
Yeah.
Like
create demand.
To it. So that's happening now for lacrosse. It's another example of that. And if they're not always going to be sold out for every single game, that's fine too. But when you have those big games and that people are going to come in and get a taste of that, well, what keeps them coming back? This is that big debate about what's going on with college football nationally. Your friend Dennis Dodd wrote about the attendance decline nationally last week.
Yeah.
Well, how do you combat that? You're going to have to come up with creative solutions that counterbalance the thing that we always talk about, which is, sitting in your living room with a cold drink in your refrigerator and no line at the bathroom and a 75-inch screen. Like, how do you do that? Well, you make it so that you don't want to miss being there. And that's true for all of those quote unquote non-revenue sports as well.
Yeah. I had a podcast about the declining attendance in major college football a couple of years ago. And I had, not during the COVID era, obviously.
Yes.
That wasn't a decline. That was a waterfall, but that was Niagara Falls. But the bottom line was, I had Dennis. I think Dennis had him on then. Dennis died, and we talked about that. And these schools are trying to find ways to attract people, but also, like you just pointed out, and I interrupted you a little bit, and I'm sure I'll get a comment about that in the comment section below. But you want to create demand, not the opposite. It's kind of like the chip industry right now. Where are the chips? But the bottom line is, like I've always said, don't talk to me about the palette. Cameron Indoor Stadium at Duke is one of the greatest places to play a basketball game ever. And how old is that place? You understand what I'm saying? I mean, it's kind of like not what the building is, it's what's being played in the building, and that's where I think some things have gotten lost a little bit. And also the catering to the, what I call it the sweet set, SUITE. Maybe college has got a little bit too far on board with that idea also. But you can buy your favorite beverage at, I think Ohio State games now anymore. Costs you about what a 6-pack or a case would cost you, but you still can get your beverage, right? And they're trying, right?
That's it. I mean, you got to make that effort. And there's no choice. I mean, and I think that Gene Smith, the other part, like, it's interesting because I was gone, we hadn't really dove into those comments. It was such an interesting press conference for an hour with him. Like, the NCAA is always, as he said, too slow to react to all these things. And this trend has been going on for a long time. And, for years, I mean, you couldn't have probably forecasted that everyone needed to have Wi-Fi for their phone. Like that wasn't something that in 2002 would have been front of mind for the attendance dip. Now, it was already happening with or without the phones, but then how long did it take until the Horseshoe had that expanding broadband that allowed for everybody in there to at least be able to text or catch a highlight or whatever else they wanted to do?
Yeah.
That was that was like 3 years ago, right? And it still wasn't perfect. So that's just one example out of thousands that we could give. But they're going to have to be more aggressive about finding solutions for that. I think Ohio State's doing a reasonably good job of that. It didn't work with some of the mobile ticketing, and I know there were fans frustrated in that first year back, but they're trying to change the ticketing model, trying to work on all the other things that go with it. Some things there'll never be a solution for. If you're going to have 100,000 people there parking and traffic, you might never get a solution for that.
Hey,
you better make sure it's worth it.
I turned 68 this month, and but I want to tell you this. I've never had a problem utilizing mobile ticketing. I mean, using your cell phone. Obviously on any flight I take anymore, that's my phone. I don't understand people who have a problem with, for example, that's just kind of, you got to move on, man. People live too much in the past in a lot of ways, and that's one of them. And the only person that can have that mobile ticket is you. And once you scan it, it's done, and, it's wow, it really can't be duplicated the way I understand it. So, I mean, get with the program, ladies and gentlemen. Don't stand in the way of progress. Otherwise, we'd still be behind mule-drawn wagons headed west. You know what I'm saying? Right? Am I right about that? They'd gotten stuck in Wyoming and said, "This is as far as we can go. Look at the Grand Tetons." Oh my, is that in Wyoming, by the way, Grand Tetons?
Yes.
Yeah. We can't go any farther. How are we going to get over those things? But
why would you want to? This seems like
and why would you want to? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you're right about that. I forgot about Almost Heaven. I thought that was West Virginia, but it moved west with the pioneers to Wyoming. But it starts with a W, but I digress. Hey, we're running out of time here now, so let's get to my main focus here. Can you keep it toot sweet? Can you keep it toot sweet?
I will give it my best.
All right. Your one position. Now, this, ladies and gentlemen, this is an explainer. This doesn't mean that two positions we name, and we don't know which one we're going to name. And if he names the one I'm going to name, then I'll just name another one. There are many positions that need shoring up, for want of another term, on Ohio State football team as it jumps into spring practice starting next week. I think it's next Tuesday. Is that correct? Awesome.
That is my understanding.
Ooh, I had a Freudian there. Austin, I don't want your mom throwing at me. I'm going to ask Austin to name one position he's got his eye on. We'll come back and name other positions as spring practice goes on, because we'll have plenty to talk about. But Austin, as you sit here going into spring practice, I keep wanting to call it preseason because it feels like an early preseason more than it does spring anymore, if you follow my drift and the way things go now. By the way, I think follow my drift is now my phrase instead of, but I digress. But what is one position, not the only position, what is one position you've definitely got your eye on going into the spring that needs to get figured out?
Yeah, you told me not to name a whole unit. You wanted me to really narrow the focus. I think linebacker is the most fascinating unit as a whole. Now, I think that Steele Chambers, we know what he can do sort of roaming around and with his athleticism. I think now part of this, as I answered, is that Jim Knowles has got this clean slate.
Yeah, you cheated, by the way, but go ahead.
I know. I'm not trying to cheat. I'm trying to explain that I don't know 100% based off of one or two conversations with Jim Knowles.
Yeah.
What he sees in the personnel. I think if it were me, I'd say, well, Steele Chambers has got to be floating around and roving and playing as that outside linebacker. So, if they're going to play with the 2 in the 4-2-5, what does that other position need to be? So I don't know if I should call it middle linebacker, something else in this scheme. We're going to learn about that as we go into spring. Does that person need to be built like Tommy Eichenberg to go in there and stop the run? And he was really, for whatever, I know why he came in for criticism early in the year, and he didn't have any tackles against Tulsa. If you paid attention to how much better he got from September through the Rose Bowl, he was showing why everyone else was so confident in his abilities. And he's more athletic than I think he gets credit for. I mean, I know he's always compared to Tuff Borland. Well, I think you saw the value of having somebody like Tuff Borland last year when they weren't stopping the run against Oregon. Now, I digress. The point is that someone like Tommy Eichenberg that you want in there? Is that something that Cody Simon, if he's healthy with the shoulder, does he fit that best?
Yeah.
You want to have two guys who move around and then put maybe a Mitchell Melton next to Steel Chambers. I don't have the answer to that. And I know that I wasn't trying to cheat, but I just feel like those two spots, I don't know yet what Jim Knowles really wants, and maybe he doesn't either.
Yeah.
Until you get into a couple of weeks of practice and it shakes out, and this is going to do that, or this is the other thing, and that's what's so fascinating to me, because it has to be at linebacker, and I feel like there's more confidence in Steel Chambers, and then you work the rest.
Yeah, it's interesting because, like you said, what does Coach Knowles want in those two linebacker spots? If in fact he sticks to the 4-2-5 idea. Concept, or as I'm calling it, the 3.5, 2.5, 5, because of that Leo position. But what does he want? Yeah. And does he want one of those linebackers to definitely be basically not stuck in concrete, but like a concrete pillar there? You're not going to run the ball, between the guards, so to speak. You're going to have to always be moving to the edge. You know what I mean? Which gives your defense more time to catch up, et cetera. I'm as interested as you are to see who's going to fit that bill. My position is backup quarterback, only because Ohio State has been blessed, really, the last 4 years, really, with not having to play its backup quarterback, with the exception of a couple of plays that mattered. I know you agree with me on that, but how long can that run last? Well, you hope it lasts forever, because C.J. Stroud's one of our favorite people. And he's also going to be, in my opinion, he should be considered the Heisman Trophy favorite, but he definitely will be among the top 3 to return to New York for a shot at the Heisman Trophy. So you want to see him have a hell of a year. But Cal McCord and then Devin Brown, Devin Brown considered the number 1 player in the class of 2022 by On3. Is that our mother? What is On3? Is that our ownership organization? How would you describe it? Our mother organization, our father organization? What is it? What's On3.com?
They are our network. I don't know the right terminology to call them. But
our brethren.
For sure.
We'll call them our brethren.
Yeah.
And On3, ordained or basically classified him as the number 1 prospect in the class. But you got Cal McCord, who we've both seen. Anybody watched the spring game last year saw him step up, man. The more that game went on, and he's the guy you left talking about more than you did C.J. Stroud. So that battle for the backup quarterback, and I'm sure Ryan's not going to tell us the quarterback position is open again like it was a year ago, right? I mean, it's pretty well defined. We don't need any. There's too much propaganda floating around in the world right now, if you know what I'm talking about, to have that going around. I don't believe Ryan will perpetrate that. But the bottom line is, I want to see one of those two guys. I hope we get to watch a little bit more of spring than we have in the last couple of years, because I want to see what Devin Brown is all about. Got to see him in that All-American game down in San Antonio. I got to watch that game on television. I've watched his highlights, from both Corner Canyon and before the name of that school southeast of Phoenix. I can't remember the name of it now. Interesting name, but I got to watch his highlights. He looks like the real deal. But I think that's as interesting a battle as they're going to be in the spring. You got to figure Travion Henderson's to be their 1 running back, right? But Mayan Williams had I thought, an underrated Rose Bowl, and probably should have been in there more than he was, et cetera. But that will be for next week's conversation. Now, going into the this week's combine, who is a Buckeye that you think could make some money for himself at the combine this week?
Oh, that's a great question, because Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave don't need to do much about that. They don't need to work out. They need to get a clean bill of health, and they're pretty much done. I think if I had to wager on it, Garrett Wilson would put more stock in his pro day, and Chris Olave would as well. Now we'll see. I could easily be wrong about that, but they don't have a lot to gain there. But somebody like Tyreek Smith, he certainly could. And I think that the days sort of the combine workout warrior shooting up the draft boards, I think those have kind of come and gone as teams have got burned and put some stock in the film. Like Tyreek Smith is just going to he's going to test well either this week in Indy or in the Woody in a couple weeks. assuming that he's fully healthy. And I think teams are going to put in the film of the game against Clemson. They're going to watch when he's fully healthy. That stretch that he had in the middle of the year when he came back from injury, that he jumps off the film. And he didn't quite get to the Chase Young, Joey Bosa, Nick Bosa level during his career that we always thought that was coming. There's a reason that we thought that, and that's because everyone can see the pure raw athleticism, the strength and speed combination, the way he can attack, the fact that Larry Johnson has coached him. All those things are going to work in his favor. So if he just goes through the interviews well and say, well, this game, I had a stretch here where I was dealing with a concussion, or I couldn't get healthy with the foot or the groin. It was really, everything from top to bottom for him at some point or another was injured. Yeah. But he goes through medical exams and they say he's good to go. Goes into the meeting rooms and shows that personality that we've all, when he was at his best and talking, like he's a phenomenal, character. I think he'll pass all those tests, and teams are going to be like, you know what? Maybe it's always that dilemma: are these injury concerns going to stick with him, or does he have more tread on the tires because he didn't have to play a ton of snaps in college? I think somebody's probably going to talk themselves into that. Yeah. Once they play in all the other stuff when Tyreek Smith is at his best.
And plus, man, if you can just wind him up and set him loose, you only need a couple plays. That's my famous thing with Nick Bosa and Joey Bosa. You guys make 2 or 3 plays a game, and everybody thinks you've had a hell of a game. Tyreek Smith is capable of having that flash moment. Like Baron Browning. He's capable of just running around a guy when you least expect it and making a play. I agree with that 100%. Jeremy Ruckert's going to be working out, isn't he?
Yes.
Yeah. See, Ruckert's the guy I've got my eye on because he had good, the way I understand it, good workouts at the Senior Bowl. And, man, I'm telling you, more and more people understand more than ever now the worth of having a seam-busting tight end. And let's face it, we really didn't get to see Jeremy Ruckert at his prolific best as a pass catcher, let's put it that way, in the Ohio State offense. And because, like I've always put it, if Chris Olave or Garrett Wilson or Jackson Smith-Njigba is open even farther down the field, throw it to them, right? And but I just think that guy is sort of fresh too in that respect. He hadn't been beat up too much. And there's a guy who I think at the combine workouts, especially route running and things like that, and in the pro day at Ohio State, is going to show off a little bit. And I think it's going to, really, upgrade his stock, for one of another term, even though it's not low to begin with. But I think it could take another upgrade. I don't know if you agree or not.
Yeah, I do. And he'll admit last year wasn't his best year at Ohio State. And costly drops, and I think from that respect, he'll have probably gone into January and February, Senior Bowl, all the crazy workouts that they go through. They somehow in 6 weeks, they get into even more ridiculous shape with these guys and the work that they put into getting ready for the combine. They look even different than when they left after the Rose Bowl and after Mickey Marotti had already transformed them. It's wild how that happens. But I think he'll be motivated for that because it's not me or you or Kevin Wilson who was saying, well, he didn't play at that championship level, and kind of got benched at one point there in November. All that stuff will feed into this because it's the most important 2, 3, 4 month stretch of his life in terms of finding the right spot and maybe determining what that salary is going to be like. And, he is a tireless worker. That can never be questioned about Jeremy Ruckert. And that stuff wasn't always able to be measured by catches in the Ohio State offense. We don't have to have that conversation again. But when it comes to just lining up and putting on those shorts and a T-shirt and running routes and doing the bench press, I'd bet on Jeremy Ruckert, and I'll bet on people being impressed with what he can bring them at the next level.
And by the way, before I get to my interview with Nick Myers, Ohio State's men's lacrosse coach, off to a 4-0 start. Back to Tyreek Smith for real quickly. Man, the few times I ever got to talk to him, because obviously one-on-ones are a rarity anymore, but I just always liked the conversations with him because he was thinking. He wasn't just sitting there giving you pat answers about things. This guy, is a thinker, and And I hope that shows up in conversations and interviews he has with NFL teams. I think that will serve him well, and, he's all about, and by thinking, I'm talking about thinking about the game of football more than anything else. I mean, he knows he can play better. And he knows maybe his best days are ahead of him, and he'll be the first to admit it, but he's always thinking about that stuff. And I think it bodes well in these kind of situations. Don't you? I
agree. Yep. He's a sharp guy. And again, we largely talked to him about the football stuff, but getting all the way back to high school, he has always had a lot of, thoughts about things going on elsewhere too. So
the T-shirts he wore,
he's, and that's why I said, like, he'll have an opportunity. I don't know what all of them are going to do at this point. A lot of that, they show up the way it works now, that they have their interviews, they meet the media. It's like, well, what's your plan? Like, what are you going to run the 40? Are you going to do the bench? Like, they generally, they already know that, but sometimes it's a decision of, like, how do you feel that day? Because, that combine has changed so much. And for Ohio State players, there hasn't been a lot of huge reward to actually working out and doing everything there. Sometimes there is, sometimes there isn't.
Yeah.
But now that Ohio State's pro day anymore it's circled on the calendar for every NFL team. So if you'd rather run in the Woody, if you'd rather lift there with Mick, around to help, if you want to just catch your balls from the quarterback, and not whoever they randomly assign you.
Yeah.
You have millions at stake. Like, just do that. And so I'll be curious to see, because, like I said, I don't think Garrett Wilson needs to do anything. I don't think Chris Olave needs to do anything. And Thayer Munford, Nicholas Petit-Frere, I don't know. Is there a tremendous reward for that in Indianapolis? Probably not. But either way, I'll be there, and we'll try and keep abreast of all those updates.
Yeah, especially now when every team is going to show up for Ohio State's pro day for a good reason, for good reasons. Yeah. Number two, everybody will have access to the times, the jumps, the reps, the bench presses, everything. So you're exactly right. It's kind of like a redundancy situation for the pros to make sure, but then they'll bring you in for maybe their own little workout or something, So it's it's just a crazy process to kill time until April. But
I'm thankful for it. It'll get me through this week, and then after that, guess what? It's
football. Well, I wasn't talking about you eating at St. Elmo's Steakhouse every night. I wasn't talking about that aspect of it. By the way, I'll hit you up with a few other places. Barbecue Heaven, you got to check that out. DeJuan Jones highly recommends it, just like I do. It's up on Martin Luther King, but it's well worth the short drive. But I digress. Let's get to my interview with Nick Myers, man. I really enjoyed talking to this guy. I got to cover a couple of his seasons back in the day when they were making some runs. And I think the magic is back in that program, the men's lacrosse program. There's just a sense that they've got some things going on they didn't have the last couple of years. And Nick's the first to admit that and agree to that. But let's get to my conversation with Nick Myers. And as promised, ladies and gentlemen, special guest on my podcast this week. Yeah, we don't just talk about football on the Tim May podcast. I even talk auto racing sometimes, Coach Myers. But Nick Myers, the head coach of the men's lacrosse team at Ohio State, off to a hot start. And Coach Myers, not long time no see. I see you almost every time I go into Woody Hayes Athletic Center. But thanks for coming on, my man.
It's a real honor, Tim. I appreciate you having me, and it's always great to be with you and talk a little bit of Buckeye lacrosse.
Well, I hope you get a lot bigger honors as the years go by for you, Coach. Hey, real quick though, I mean, what's it? Obviously it's early. It's early in this campaign, but there just seems to be something special about this lacrosse team that I wanted to get in on the ground floor in terms of bandwagon jumping. If that, in fact, that's the case, I break my legs sometimes jumping on bandwagons. But there is what I call special about y'all start is. You guys are, I don't know if you borrowed some stuff from Ryan Day or whatever, but y'all are playing offense, my man.
Well, I appreciate you having me, as I said. And I think, you know as well as I do, when you walk into that atrium, one of the signs you see is you win with people.
Yeah.
And, you mentioned the bigger honors. I'm not sure that necessarily is the case. I've been here almost 20 years at the great, in the great state of Ohio and working this incredible athletic department. And so a lot of ways I've really grown up in this department. I started when I was 21 years old, and I'm 42 now, and so it's been really special. And you've been a fixture in the Woody Hayes for as long as I can remember, and being around the program, being around football, and as you know, our offices are right next to football. I'm sitting here looking into the indoor facility. So,
Yeah.
you know, it's an opportunity to be around amazing people, and this team bringing it back to us. We had a really interesting and challenging year in many ways last year, but a year that I'll always reflect back on as a coach, made me better. And for those athletes that endured, you know, what we asked of them, I'll always be very thankful for. And I think that really set the stage for what's happening right now. You know, we had, for the first time in almost 2 years, about 25 or 30 of our men stay here this summer and train. And as you know, with the new Schumacher facility, that's a difference maker, you know, so be able to have our men stay in the summer and really get a summer of training in, build that team cohesion. Our strength coach, Coach Carpenter, does an amazing job. And then, you know, it really set the stage for a great fall. You know, our fall is similar to spring football. For those that are unfamiliar, we get about a 4-week competitive period. We were able to scrimmage outside competition. Teams like Syracuse, North Carolina, actually Team USA that I'm working with came into town, and we scrimmaged them as well. And that really kind of, I felt like, set the stage for where we are now. We were able to, you know, bring in a new freshman class, 12 new guys that have been great. We had a couple of transfers in the off season. And as you said, it's a different energy. You know, we had guys like Terafenko and Henrik that were 3-time captains for us move on. And so we have new leadership, new energy. And I think we've really built on a lot of the experiences from a year ago to where we are now. It's still early. I know people are excited. You know, we were a team that came into the season unranked. First time in a long time we've started the season unranked. And then we're up today. We'll see what we come out today. We'll probably be in that 6 to 8 range. So, you know, I think that's caught a lot of people's attention. But I do think that we knew we had something with this group early. But if you look at our schedule, there's no weeks off. You know, we're playing a ranked team almost every week from this point on. So there's a lot of work to be done, but long-winded answer to your first question. That's kind of a quick recap of how we've gotten where we are. And it's, like I said, it's with great people like yourself and these men that just love to put in a good, hard day's work.
But how, you know, maybe y'all have played offense on this kind of like on this level before. I know you have, but just consistently getting these big scoring games from these guys. I mean, what is that just another, taking it to another level kind of a deal, an aggression kind of situation? How would you explain, you know,
Sure.
Just the outburst, I guess?
No, you're absolutely right. And for your listeners, I mean, our first year of Buckeye lacrosse was 1949. To give you context, it's the first time in Buckeye lacrosse history that we've started, or we've had 4 games in consecutive row where we scored 17 plus games. So, you know, the scoring's up. I think one thing you have to look at right away is we're in the 3rd year in college lacrosse of the shot clock era. So, you know, you look back in time with basketball, when it moved from the 4 corners to the shot clock, you saw certainly an uptick in scoring. Well, lacrosse just recently, 3 years ago, added a shot clock to the game. And so I think scoring in college lacrosse in general is up. But we're in that top, you know, 5 to 6 right now in scoring offenses. And, you know, we've had to evolve. You know, you look at the 2017-18 teams that we had. Those were defensive teams. You know, one went to a Final Four.
Yes.
The 2018 had the best defense in the Big Ten. And we've just had to evolve, you know, our, if you will, like our competitive
approach.
Approach to just what it looks like to win in the Big Ten. And with a team like Maryland in your conference, you can't sit back. I mean, they're the standard. You have to be building a team that's going to compete at their level, and they're going to a Final Four or national championship almost every year. So that's exciting to have that kind of competitiveness in the conference. The Big Ten, I think 5 of the 6 teams are in the top 15 right now. So the conference top to bottom is, and the one that isn't just beat Yale this weekend, Penn State, you know, a top 5 win. So it's a heck of a conference, and from a competitive perspective. And, you know, the analytics, we've just looked at, you know, we've figured out ways to kind of speed up in areas, how to use the shot clock, how to create more offense. And it's been a process, Tim. It wasn't overnight. I think what I'm most proud of, you look at that Carolina win, and we had our first 10 goals were from 10 different guys. You know, so we've really prided ourselves on being able to spread it out. You know, certainly Jack's a guy that is kind of stirs the drink for us offensively, but, you know, we're getting contributions from freshmen, seniors, 5th-year guys. A lot of different guys are chipping in, and that's great to see. It's what you need to be successful offensively. You got to score in different ways.
Does Jack have a last name?
Jack Myers. Yeah, no relation. Jack Myers. He's a senior for us. He's got the extra year of eligibility that we're looking forward to having him hopefully back one more year here in the Scarlet and Gray. But he's he's really evolved each year that he's been here with us. He's a captain for us. And yeah, he's off to a great start.
You ever run his family tree? There isn't any connection at all? I mean, what's the deal, man?
I don't know.
I mean,
We spelled the name the same way too, which is nice. They were great. He's actually, in fact, his family has they got a house in Naples, and we were just in Florida this weekend. So they hosted the team over their house.
wow.
And the families. We don't typically do that, but as I said, with COVID, we haven't been around our families a whole lot.
Yeah.
And so we got down there Friday. We actually had a nice lunch over the house and just some really nice fellowship. And the Myers family were great. So it was a great weekend for Jack to be down there around his family. He had a big game, and just a really positive weekend overall for the Buckeye lacrosse family.
Well, but what does it say about you guys? I mean, this is why I've got a little feel for you guys. But you take these trips, but you guys took care of business. You know what I mean? It wasn't, wasn't just a trip down to Florida in the middle of February, which most of us would relish. I went to Vegas for a week, but that's another story. But you took care of business. What does it just tell you about what we're talking about here about this team? I mean, am I wrong? You do have a little bit of a feel for this team, right? I know it's way early. And you got a trip to Cornell this week, a trip to, well, I'm not sure that's Florida, right? That's the opposite of Florida.
Yeah,
hard by Cayuga's waters. But what does it just tell you about this team? I mean, about it having sort of its maturity act together.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think if you look at the last 2 weeks, you take a road trip, you defend the Woody Hayes, and you win your first 2 games over Detroit and Cleveland State. And, those are at home early, you're expected to win those games. And those are tough because, you feel like you're kind of the hunted. And then I told the men, look, man, we're unranked. We're going down to Carolina. They were the 1 seed in the NCAA tournament last year. Now we get to hunt a little bit, and I felt like we went down there. We were loose. We were focused. And we executed about as well as we possibly could in that second half, and I think that gave our men a lot of confidence because we've seen it in practice. We've seen flashes of it, and we really felt like we put it together there in that second half of Carolina. But it's tough to do on the road. The road presents challenges, things that you forget about with student athletes, just classes, buses. We're not always chartered places. We bussed home from Carolina. We got back around 2:33 a.m. and we're back in the weight room Sunday around 11 o'clock. So we're asking a lot of these guys, especially when you go on the road 3 straight weeks, and this will be our 3rd weekend on the road.
Right.
So it's a great test. So I think going to your point is you find out a little bit about the character of your team. I mean, I always look at a team and you have your competence, how talented are you? And then what's the character of your team? And, competence is only going to take you so far, and so I think this weekend down in Florida, there was a lot of distractions. We were the hottest team in college lacrosse last week. Everybody's talking about us. Jack's the player of the week. There's families, there's sunshine. Everything pointed to this being kind of a trap game for us with a really good Harvard team that we didn't have a lot of film on, just coming out of the Ivy League, and they're very well coached. We didn't play as well as we did the week before. There were some sloppy moments, but I think, again, going back to the character of your team, to find a way to dig in. We were down at halftime 6-5 and come out in the 3rd quarter. And, guys like Justin Anasio, Jack Myers, Jackson Reed, your leaders, really just took it upon themselves to get us back in that game and really kind of take it over.
Yeah.
You love to see that. Those are moments that you'll lean back on later in the year. So here we are. We got another really tough test going to Ithaca. We'll bus there. So it's a long ride. And they're excellent. This is the kind of team I told the guys that it's going to come down to in our sport, Tim, as you know, I mean, RPI, if you're in that 15, 16, 17 RPI, you're a bubble team in men's lacrosse. So us and Cornell, this is a game that feels like a playoff game. We played them 2 years ago in the shoe on ESPN, and it was a 1-goal game. And it felt like a tournament game, 2 teams that are physical, 2 teams that will be fighting hard for either a conference championship or an at-large bid at the end of the year. And so our men know the magnitude of this week, and that's the exciting part of the schedule. Each week's going to have that feel from this point on.
Oh, so let's just jump into something too, though. It's like we were talking about the new center there where you guys get to work out and stuff, and then right across the street. Well, excuse me, right across the parking lot. Matter of fact, you probably have to walk right through the little spot I usually park in when I'm coming there for football interviews. You got your new stadium underway and stuff. What is it? Just it's kind of the opposite of build it and they will come. Y'all came and now they're building it. You know what I mean? Y'all are kind of coming on. It's more of they're coming on so they will build it situation. But do you sense just a momentum in this program that's maybe unprecedented in all kinds of ways?
Yeah. Well, Tim, I really appreciate you asking. And you know, this is one for me that's been a little bit of a labor of love over the years. You know, as like I said, year 14 as a head coach and my 19th season as a Buckeye. You know, we've been very fortunate in going back to Coach Tressel, Coach Meyer, Coach Day. You know, I kind of feel like, and you've seen this, you know, lacrosse has always been football is like little brother. You know, we've been able to, those coaches have been so good to me and so good to the program and allowing us to use the indoor facility and the football practice fields and play in the shoe. And that's never been lost on us. You know, there's very few programs that have lacrosse at the Power 5 level that have that kind of relationship with football. We've played in front of the spring football game several times, as you know.
Yeah.
So over the years, that's been amazing, you know, but I think with that presents challenges too, you know, from scheduling to practice times to really just having a place that you can call your own, you know, and hang your banners. And you look at baseball and softball and soccer and tennis and wrestling and what we've been able to do in this, you know, this kind of pavilion, you know, Gene likes to refer to as kind of almost like an Olympic village, if you will, of athletic facilities. You know, to be able to now have this opportunity, and it's been a process, but the conversation really started after the Final Four with Gene about, hey, look at Penn State's done this. Team up north has created a lacrosse only venue. These are starting to happen now. Can we start to look at, you know, something like this? And he was great. You know, here we are, you know, years later, even got through COVID with it. COVID set us back about a year, but, you know, we got a $21.5 million lacrosse only stadium, fully funded by our Buckeye Nation, all fundraised. And it's going to be special. Like you said, it's right between the Covelli Center and the Ty Tucker Center. It's going to have attendance of about 2,500 to 3,000. It's going to have all different types of fan experiences, whether it's grandstands, sitting on the berm. We're going to have an elevated deck you can look at from behind one of the end zones, 360 seating. So it's going to be a perfect venue for us. Yeah. It's going to be a place that we can call home. It's going to be kind of a flag in the ground for lacrosse in the state of Ohio. You know, I envision high school men's and women's state championships being played there. You know, every young boy and girl in the state of Ohio growing up, you know, dreaming of playing in that stadium. And, you know, and that to me is a big deal. And then for our student athletes to have a place, I mean, your facility is your classroom. It's where we teach. And to know that we have a space that our men can go and not have to ask permission to be able to step into or worry whether or not they have to leave or can go anytime. There's going to be a shooting room. It's something that I know is really important. And when you lean on the alumni, like I said, 1949 is when we got this thing started. To be able to get to this point, I think a lot of these men and women never really felt like that was even possible. And here we are building a home on their shoulders is something that I think for our alumni is really exciting as well. So listen, I'll keep going. I'm fired up. We're a year away, and I can't wait to get you in there for a big home game next year.
Yeah, no kidding, man. Save me a spot. But number two, are these guys going to have concrete walls to bounce balls off of, like I watch them do in the Woody Hayes? I mean, the indoor facility. I mean, that's one of my.
I think Coach
sometimes I've had to dodge them. Go ahead now.
That's right. That's right. I think there'll be an overwhelming excitement about lacrosse balls no longer flying around the indoor field the way they have. So I appreciate that can be sometimes a challenge. You're doing an interview and you got guys shooting over to your right. So we got a new home. We'll get out of your way, and it'll be a win-win for everybody.
I'll tell you what I've always wanted to do, and I've never done it yet. And I'm going to do it eventually. You know, everybody knows me now. I walk around with a little mini video camera all the time anymore. Forget about writing stuff down, you know. And I can't remember long enough to write it down. No, I'm just joking. But I've always wanted to stand behind the goal there when these guys are firing off shots, you know, at the goalie and stuff, just to give people an idea, you know, not a true sense, but an idea of what these guys are looking at and stuff, you know, from just how fast that ball moves and just the power in the game and stuff. And that's what I wanted to ask you, just as the training facilities ramp up, like, you know, the new facility there, what's the name of it? The Schumacher, or what's the name of the, the Schumacher Center. I mean, have you noticed an uptick just physically in your team? I mean, yeah, you guys have always worked out, you've always lifted, et cetera, but has there been an uptick even in that aspect of it?
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. I mean, it's a remarkable facility. And like I said, I got to go back to Mr. Smith, you know, Janine Ullman, our leadership. And then obviously Buckeye Nation, who's made it possible. I mean, that's a $45 million facility. That's, I think we're just maybe we're close to 4 years now old. The big takeaway, Tim, I think for the student athlete, and you know football, you're familiar with the Woody, but the other side of the building, what makes it incredible for our athletes is just the ability to come in and have everything in one space. I mean, you can meet with a coach, you can meet with nutrition, you can, the guys are eating before and after practice right in the cafeteria. We call it the nest. You got the weight room right there, the training room right there. So everything is within a rock's throw of each other. And I think for a student athlete, the most important thing that they have each day is the ability to manage their time.
Yeah.
And to be able to be here for 2.5 hours and have everything get done and then be able to leave and go back to being a student and really focus on that part of their day is critical to success. The guys in building, being in the Big Ten, started in 2015 for men's lacrosse, for those that don't know, that upped the ante, in terms of physical play, what we needed to do, the way we needed to recruit to be competitive in the Big Ten. And I think, having men stay here in the summertime, like I said, having that 25, 30-man crew in the summer is critical. And that's something we just didn't have before the Schumacher. We didn't have the facility. We didn't have the amenities to really make that as attractive as it is now for our men. And now that we do, and we're doing that, I absolutely have seen that change. I've seen the commitment to the weight room year round that you really need to have to make the changes you need to for a young recruit who's 18, 19 years old to really transform into a Buckeye and a high-end Big Ten lacrosse player. So, there's no doubt the facility's been a difference maker. So big thanks to Buckeye Nation and Gene Smith.
What I've always liked about your approach, Coach Myers, is the for want of another term, the why not us approach, meaning, just because, we all know the traditional big time lacrosse programs out there through the year, but why not Ohio State, right? I mean, that's and I think this is an example of it coming to fruition, and it's just that approach.
Yeah. Well, like I said, we're not in any way like looking at and a reflecting type point at this stage of the game, but we want Buckeyes to understand and appreciate the responsibility of wearing the scarlet and gray first and foremost. There's nothing like it. It's the best university in the world. I know how strongly you feel about Buckeye Nation. And, I think for our men to have that deep appreciation and respect for the Block O is where it starts. That love for each other, and the understanding that the only team that's getting in our way is us. We talk a lot about our biggest opponent is Ohio State, and I think our men have that healthy. We have that sign in our locker room says humble warriors. I truly believe that if you can instill that kind of confidence in your men, that the only team beating us is us, it kind of points the thumb back at you. It creates a sense of urgency, but it also creates a level of confidence. The last time UNC got beat by 12 goals was 1978 at home. You don't just go down there and do that kind of thing. And for our men, I just don't think there was a real surprise factor. You didn't sense that from our men. It was like, hey, we went down there and we executed. And I think that to me is when we know we're onto something, but we also know that, hey man, we were losing to Cleveland State in the first half and they were getting the best of us. So there's a humility there too of, there's nobody that we can't beat and there's nobody that can't beat us. And I think, that type of work, that's a life skill, in my opinion, being self-aware, teaching that self-awareness to young men, the ability to continue to grind, to continue to point a thumb and look inward, and to chase excellence. And chasing excellence means you have to delay gratification. You have to be able to ignore noise. You have to be able to push positives and some of that to the side and really continue to focus and fall in love with the mundane, fall in love with the everyday grind that you hear about. And for student athletes now, that's not easy, and so being on that journey with men and, seeing the ability, I have guys that I can coach for 4 and 5 years, and the relationships that you can build in that time is pretty remarkable. And so we're getting great leadership from some of these guys that are 22 years old. And my hope is that these lessons, Tim, are life skill lessons that will carry them in life, years beyond their time with Buckeye lacrosse.
Yeah. Concentration, one possession at a time. That's yes, the way you build a championship season. Hey, let's go back to your stadium real quick before we go. Is it going to be an all-surface field? An all-weather field? What's the plan for the actual surface, and what do you prefer in that regard? I guess. Go ahead.
Yeah. We've worked with a couple of different turf companies. I think we settled on one. So it'll be a very similar surface to what you see, in Ohio Stadium in the shoe. It'll probably have a little bit less infill. Just our sport, we're not falling on the turf every play like you have in football. So it'll be a little bit faster. The big thing is it's going to have a heating system. So Gene gave the go ahead. We're going to put a heating system under the turf. one of it. I don't know how many there are in the country like that. There's only a handful. But basically, anytime it'll be set somewhere in the low 40s. Anytime the field, the temperature drops below 40 degrees, the way it works is the heating system will turn on, and it'll just keep the field from freezing. Basically, we'll still have to plow it, but for us, January, February, we're outside every day. That's our goal. And to have a field that's soft, and that's where you get injuries, where you get into some sticky spots. So that investment, that was right around a $1.2 million investment to the project to have that. But 2/3 of our season are played in January and February. So this is going to be an incredible addition and really allow our student athletes to get every practice in. And candidly, it'll take some pressure off the indoor facility. Now you have potentially 90 student athletes of men's and women's lacrosse that are no longer using the indoor. So it's a win-win. Like I said, it's an investment, but it's going to make our venue and our field pretty unique that way.
This is going to sound stupid, but how important is it to have lacrosse markings sort of only on a field? I mean, I think it adds to the ambiance like you're talking about. I mean, as opposed to, and I'm not because I think Ohio Stadium, man, if you can get a huge crowd in there, that's a great place to play anything, but how important is it? Because, the Woody Hayes Athletic Center's got permanent football lines in it, et cetera. And like you said, you're not here to slam football at all. You guys have worked in partnership pretty well. But how important is it just from an ambiance, a feeling standpoint, to have a field out there that's marked off pretty much only for lacrosse?
Yeah. I think you make great points. I think that we practice on fields a lot of times in fall that don't have lacrosse lines on them at all.
Yeah.
Or just the crease. So that's just been our way of life. And Tim, me, we'll play in the parking lot. That's not our style. So, but I go back to the point I made earlier of just, football, like I said, has been incredible to us. We feel like we have the best facilities in the country at our access right now. This new home is really about our family having a place that we can hang our hat on, and show share our story. We'll get 3,000-4,000 people in the shoe, and it doesn't feel like you have a crowd in there,
Right.
And is the shoe an amazing place? Obviously, the men love playing in there, but it's not home to Buckeye lacrosse. And we've always appreciated that and realized that. It's an honor to play in there, and it will always be. This new home is going to be a place, like I said, we anticipate sellouts. We anticipate this being a place from a fan experience that's second to none. But the everyday use to go into a field that has your lines, where you can practice, and we're not worrying about, hey, we're putting lines down, but pro days next week, or if we put the lines down now, and just that constant balancing act for our grounds crew, and making sure that cages aren't where they shouldn't be. We've lived in that space, like I said, for 20 years, and now we're going to have a space where our student athletes, they can go out and shoot anytime they want. They can go out to the field and have access to it, train on it year round, summer, winter, fall. So that like I said, it's a home run. I really feel like it's going to take our program maybe just to that next level in terms of the ability to recruit, but also really just to teach and develop players on a consistent basis.
Coach Myers, one last thing,
Yes, sir.
I've been around. I've kept my ear to the ground a lot on stuff, even though I don't, I'm not necessarily covering stuff. But you've had opportunities, or at least there have been overtures made to you in the past. I'm under the impression, what is it about Ohio State that just makes has made you want to, as the old saying goes, stand your ground here? What is it about Ohio State?
Yeah. Well, I'm very fortunate to be a part of this department. As I said that I've grown up here. I've had incredible opportunity as a young man, just to learn from so many great leaders. Shout out to Coach McGuff for last night winning a Big Ten championship, and
women's basketball. Yeah, that's
right. The fellowship, Tommy Ryan, one of my best friends, and just the fellowship that we have as coaches here, I think is pretty unique. And that to me is something that is really special. But my family, my wife and I, Julie and I, we love it here in Ohio. Our children, we're Buckeyes. And, I just think that for me, the thought has never even crossed my mind. We're dug in here. We got big plans. I truly believe that we're going to bring a national championship back here to Columbus. And hopefully sooner than later, but it's to me, Buckeye lacrosse is a way of life. It's my faith, my family, and Buckeye lacrosse. I like to fish here and there. That's simple things off the field. But this is so much more than just a job to me. It's the people here in the department that have made it incredible. the support that we get, and certainly the men. So very grateful to be a Buckeye and hopeful to be a Buckeye for years to come.
Ladies and gentlemen, Nick Myers, head coach of the Ohio State men's lacrosse team, off to the hottest start, in my opinion, in the nation. And Coach Myers, thanks for joining the Tim May podcast, my man.
Hey, I really appreciate it. Go Bucks. Take care.
Boy, you can tell the excitement in Nick Myers' voice, right, Austin, that not just the team, but the program, the men's lacrosse program is on the rise, man. And that new stadium, he's all but giddy about that deal.
Can't blame him for that. I mean, it's just a tool in his arsenal there that he can use to bring in players and give them a stage. Ohio State's doing. It seems like, as you said, there might have been a little bit of a dip there and a flag in the excitement. It seems like it's been almost relatively steady growth. Other than that,
yeah.
Since I went to Columbus and watching that program, and you see those guys going pro, and there are a couple examples of NIL deals that are helping there. So, once you harness that brand, and then you have all this other stuff that you can pitch. I mean, who knows what'll happen? I don't know what it truly takes, to be honest, to build a lacrosse powerhouse, but I have to imagine that, based on my dealings with Nick Myers, he seems smart enough. He seems to be personable enough. And now he's got all the resources behind it with Ohio State and all the other things that go along with that in the stadium. And got to think that they're going to be able to compete now for the foreseeable future.
Yeah. And what it takes, I mean, as he touched on, it takes people, man. It takes the right, getting the players. And what gets the players is success. And what else helps? Facilities. And what else helps? Backing, basically from fan base, et cetera. And they're generating all of that now, or, they're going to have their own stadium here before you know it. And just everything's pointing in the right direction. Hey, you know what? Speaking of pointing in the right direction, I'm going to point to the taxiway and take us into the parking area right now. But what is, other than an Ohio State player, who are you most curious to maybe run into, bump into, talk to at the combine? Is Jameson Williams even going to work out? Is he going to be there? I mean, who's that one guy? And give me a short answer.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I didn't check to see when Jameson Williams was talking. I had assumed that he was going to be there to let teams get a look at the foot, ankle, leg situation and evaluate that themselves. I don't know. It's crazy whether that matters or not. I mean, It's in the middle of a rehab, but you get to go through the interviews with the other teams and talk about the process and get on the chalkboard. And I think it would be interesting if he and Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave are all going at the same time, but they're all still really great friends. Like this, yeah. I don't know. We don't have to talk about that, but Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson, didn't want him to leave, and
right.
James Williams needed to find that playing time. It'd be interesting to have him again in that setting, because the Ohio State beat tends to have more representatives there than any other college program. It's supposed to be, it's for the NFL teams, but the interest in that program never stops, and we're 3 hours away. It doesn't make any sense not to be there to check in with those guys on their journey. And so that does lend itself to, we haven't seen you in a while, since last April. Let's go into that decision again. And I'm sure he'll have some more nicely coached up answers, but I think he would definitely be at the top of the list. And Chad Muma, because I'm just going to keep throwing him out there for people to add to, so you can get the next Logan Wilson.
There you go, ladies and gentlemen. There's the plug. By the way, I once made it from my house to Indianapolis Motor Speedway in 2 hours and 21 minutes. So, 3 hours, man. That's
throw down the gauntlet.
Huh? Well,
throw down the gauntlet for me.
You sort of kind of hook up with a convoy and keep going, if you know what I'm saying, man. You got to get in that draft. You got to get in the draft. But anyway, hey, Austin, I almost slipped there. And with your mom throwing tomatoes at me this late in the podcast. Austin, thanks for getting back in the co-pilot's chair. Hope you're going to be in there for a while now, man, as we go through Ohio State's spring football drills, et cetera, peruse what's going on. And the reason it's important, I mean, like I said, I don't want my podcast to be all about Ohio State football all the time. But like I've always remind people, when we're talking about Ohio State football, we're talking about the national picture. We're talking about a team that's involved in the national run in some form or fashion every year. That's why it's important. That's why people from other places tune in. They want to hear what's going on. Also, that's why your Roosters take every Monday, one of the more popular things out there, because people want to know what's going on with this Ohio State football program, right?
They sure do. And wouldn't have it any other way.
All right. Well, that's all that's playing. That's all will be playing on our in-flight entertainment program next week, ladies and gentlemen. But until then, for Austin Ward, this is Tim May. We'll see you then.